There comes a time in a bulldog's life when he gets the itch for a little excitement, a taste of the unpredictable. Sure, I love my life with Henry. He's a decent guy, 30-something, smells mostly like stale coffee and office carpet, but he's loyal and brings me treats. But this one night, when he slumped onto the couch for his post-dinner nap, I knew this was my chance. I had it all planned. A little wiggle, a nudge, and voila, the window cracked open just enough. You'd think Henry might notice a dog of my, rather stocky stature squeezing his way out, but my guy snores like a cement mixer. Within minutes, I was out, paws touching the cool Brooklyn street under a blanket of stars. Ah, Brooklyn at night. It's like every street is calling, "Frank, come sniff me." How could I resist? So there I was, tasting the air, a mix of pizza crust and mystery fumes. Adventure had officially begun. I strutted down the sidewalk, chest puffed out, glancing back just to make sure no one was watching the escape artist in action. Now, you might think I'd have regrets, but no. I felt alive. As alive as a bulldog can feel, anyway. With a little swagger in my step, I was off to explore what the night held in store. Brooklyn at night, I've learned, is like a theater of aromas, each scent a different act. First up was the garbage cans outside the Italian deli. Ah, pure heaven in an aluminum can. Leftover lasagna bits and what might have once been a meatball. I sniffed, thinking, who needs Henry's organic treats? Just as a gruff voice called from the shadows, "What you doing, chubby?" A sleek, gray tabby, narrowing his eyes at me from atop a dumpster. Cats, always with the attitude. "Mind your own business, Whiskers," I shot back. "A bulldog's gotta eat." He squinted at me like I'd committed a crime against dignity. "You don't belong out here, you know. Bet your human doesn't even know you're gone." Ouch. Right in the loyalty. But what did this alley cat know? He probably hadn't been hugged since kittenhood. "Yeah, well, maybe I'm on an important mission," I said, brushing him off with a side-eye. With a huff, he slinked back into the shadows, leaving me with the remains of lasagna, which I promptly devoured. Brooklyn has these little pockets of green, and that night, I found one of them. Trees, benches, a couple of humans here and there. Not the wild Amazon, but hey, it felt like wilderness to me. I padded across the grass, feeling the earth under my paws, and caught sight of a squirrel. And not just any squirrel. A fat, taunting squirrel who knew he was out of my reach. "Come on down, fuzzball," I barked, trying to sound intimidating. He gave me a little tail flick, like a laugh. I jumped. He jumped higher. Figures. With a resigned sigh, I decided I'd save my energy for other pursuits. After all, this was my night to roam free, not to be outwitted by a squirrel. But still, I took a mental note. Revenge on squirrels. Someday. I trotted deeper into the park and noticed some dogs hanging out off-leash. They looked rough around the edges. Real street dogs, the kind who'd probably never had a kibble in their life. One of them, a wiry terrier with a missing tooth, approached me, sniffing with intense curiosity. "You don't smell like us," he observed. "Not from around here, are ya?" Another one chimed in, a scruffy mutt with a scar over his eye. "Listen, I'm from the cushy side of town, but I'm here for the experience," I declared, trying to sound tough. They snickered, but in a friendly way. Turns out, street dogs aren't half bad once you get past the initial sniffing and squinting. We spent a good half hour swapping stories, mostly theirs about food scraps and sneaking onto the subway. Then, with a nod, they disappeared into the night, leaving me feeling a little more seasoned. What's a night out in Brooklyn without a pizza stop? I mean, I might be a dog, but I know where the real food's at. I ambled down to a pizza joint on Henry's walk-home route, peering through the glass doors like a kid in a candy store. I'd had the pleasure of a few crusts courtesy of Henry, but tonight I wanted the real thing. Luck was on my side. A guy stepped out with a steaming slice and, mid-bite, got distracted by his phone. I didn't waste a second. I gave him the old bulldog stare, a combination of drool, wide eyes, and a head tilt that had softened even the hardest hearts. It worked. Without even realizing it, he dropped half his slice. Jackpot. Cheesy goodness, I thought, savoring every bite. I glanced around, hoping no one from the park would see me slumming it with a stranger's leftovers. But what can I say? Sometimes dignity takes a back seat to pepperoni. Brooklyn's a different place at night. After the pizza, I started noticing things that seemed darker. The shadows felt thicker, and I could swear I heard footsteps that stopped when I did. A strange noise echoed from an alleyway, sending a shiver down my spine. I reminded myself, Frank, you're a bulldog, not a chihuahua. You've got this. But still, my ears perked up, and my tail dropped a little lower. Then I saw him, a huge black dog, a shadow in the night, staring at me from across the street. I'd heard tales of dogs who ran the streets and never answered to any human. This guy was one of them. He patted closer, slow and deliberate, his eyes fixed on me. What's your business here? He asked in a voice as rough as asphalt. Just, exploring, I stammered, trying to keep cool. I wasn't scared. Okay, maybe just a little. But he didn't make a move, just nodded slowly. Keep out of trouble, he said, disappearing back into the night. Once I collected myself after that little encounter, I continued down a quiet, leafy side street. There was something about the air here, fresh, like it hadn't been touched by the city's endless hum. Suddenly, I caught a whiff of something sweet and earthy, like flowers in the spring. Intrigued, I followed the scent, my nose leading me to a hidden gate with ivy curling all around it. With a little paw action, I nudged the gate open, and there it was, a small, secret garden in the middle of Brooklyn. It was just a patch of green and a few blooms, but to me, it looked like paradise. I sniffed every plant, every patch of soil, marking this place in my mind. Here, under the faint glow of the street lamp, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. I took a moment to sit, my bulldog butt sinking into the cool grass, and gazed at the stars peeking through the leaves. I thought about Henry, my human, my pal. I could imagine him there beside me, maybe sharing a laugh or rubbing my head in that way I like. This secret garden was my little slice of freedom, but it reminded me of what I'd left behind. Suddenly, a wave of something warm and strange washed over me. Could it be, was I missing Henry? As I ambled back into the busier parts of town, feeling a bit like an explorer returning from uncharted lands, I ran into my next obstacle, or rather, it ran into me. A lady walking her teacup poodle, a shaky little thing with more bark than sense, spotted me from across the street. "Oh my God, a stray!" she yelped. Before I could blink, she whipped out her phone, talking loudly into it. "Yes, there's a stray bulldog on 5th and Bayard. He looks... lost?" Lost? I wasn't lost. I was on an adventure. But humans sometimes jump to conclusions. I considered my options. Play the poor, lost pup card and milk her for a snack, or make a break for it before I ended up in some shelter. The latter won out, and I bolted, my short legs churning as I took off down the street. Behind me, I heard the woman gasp, but I didn't stop. If she thought she was getting this free-spirited bulldog on a leash, she had another thing coming. A few blocks away, I slowed down to catch my breath, feeling a rush of relief. That's when I noticed a warm glow spilling out from a doorway nearby. The smell hit me next, meaty, savory, familiar. It was a 24-hour diner, and the aroma of burgers and bacon drifted into the street like a beacon for a hungry wanderer like me. Just as I was about to investigate, a familiar bark called out. Turning around, I saw a scruffy, big-eared shepherd mix I'd met once at the dog park. His name was Lucky, and he trotted up, his tail wagging in surprise. "Frank, what are you doing out here?" he asked, sniffing around me like I was some kind of marvel. "Just out for a bit of late-night exploring," I said, playing it cool. Lucky's eyes gleamed with that look only fellow troublemakers know. "Think they'd noticed 2 dogs wandering in?" he asked, nodding toward the diner. I grinned, and together we trotted up to the doorway. It didn't take long for the diner's cook, a gruff guy with a soft spot for strays, to toss us a few scraps. He muttered something about city dogs running amok, but he smiled as he handed over a couple of greasy bites. Lucky and I devoured them, savoring the taste of rebellion. Eventually, Lucky and I said our goodbyes, and I set off on my own again, enjoying the final leg of my night out. But as I turned a corner, something caught my eye. A shadowy figure up the street. A tall man, slouched over in that way Henry does when he's tired after a long day. Could it be Henry? I froze, debating whether I wanted to be caught or not, but my wagging tail gave me away. As he got closer, I saw him stop, squinting in the dim light. "Frank?" he called, his voice a mix of confusion and relief. I knew I was busted, but strangely, I didn't mind. I trotted up to him, giving my best guilty but cute look, and he let out a long, exasperated sigh. "You little rascal," he muttered, scratching my head. But there was no anger in his eyes, just a tired smile. I nudged his hand, happy to feel the familiar touch of my human. On the walk back, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I'd braved Brooklyn streets, sniffed out the city's best scents, and discovered secret gardens. I'd had a night filled with mischief, mystery, and maybe a few close calls. And yet, as much as I loved the thrill of it all, the idea of curling up on my bed at home sounded pretty good too. Henry didn't say much as we walked, but he gave me a gentle pat every few steps, as if he understood. When we reached our apartment, I watched as he fiddled with the keys, letting us inside. The familiar smell of our place, that mix of old takeout and Henry's cologne wrapped around me like a warm blanket. As I settled down on my bed, Henry sat beside me, muttering something about needing to get a sturdier window lock. I looked up at him, giving a little snort as if to say, "Good luck with that." He chuckled, giving me one last scratch behind the ears. So, that was my night in Brooklyn. A taste of freedom, a dip into danger, and a reminder that, no matter where my paws take me, home is where Henry is. Sure, the adventure was thrilling, and I'll probably sneak out again one day when the urge strikes. But for now, I was content, curled up, my belly full, my spirit satisfied. I drifted off, dreaming of the city streets and Henry's laughter, knowing that no matter where I went, I'd always be his best friend, his partner in crime, his loyal bulldog, Frank. And if that wasn't an adventure worth having, I didn't know what was.